Dead Air Part 1. Chapter 1. White Noise. Ambient, slow build of urban night sounds, distant sirens, soft static, low hum of city life. The sound of a tape recorder clicking on. Narrator calm and introspective. There are moments the brain forgets, not because it can't remember, but because it's been told not to. At 3:47 a.m., the body of a man was found in a suburban home on the west side of Belridge. He was alone. No forced entry. No defensive wounds. Just gone. His face unrecognizable, a scorched tape recorder playing soft static beside his bed. Visual, police lights reflect off dark windows. A corpse under a sheet. A detective stands still, watching. Narrator. They called in Dr. Elise Mercer, a specialist in behavioral forensics. The one they use when the killer doesn't make sense to anyone else. She didn't sleep anymore, not really. She drifted, between cases, coffee, and a strange kind of silence only the deeply alone come to understand. Her mind was sharp. Sharp enough to catch killers. But that night, something slipped. Visual, Elise Mercer, late 30s, eyes sharp but tired, walks into the home. Her breath fogs in the cold. She notices something off. The tape recorder's noise isn't just static. Elise her own internal monologue. It's not white noise. There's a rhythm. Almost like breathing. Audio. The static pulses slowly, then blips, faint Morse-like beeps buried under it. Subtle, unnerving. Narrator. The victim's name was Dennis K. Former software engineer. No enemies. No break-in. But his entire music collection had been erased. Only the radio remained, tuned to 108.7 FM. A frequency with no official station. Just dead air. Visual, Elise stares at the radio, her reflection distorted in the dial. Narrator. It wasn't the first time Elise had heard about 108.7. It was the frequency of the signal, a pirate radio station that only aired between 2 and 4 a.m. No ads. No music. Just a voice. Soothing. Low. Familiar. Audio, a faint male voice whispers. You're safe now. Let go. Then more static. Elise. I've heard this voice before. Narrator. Back at her apartment, Elise couldn't sleep. She turned on her old radio and tuned to the frequency. Static again. Then a voice, warm, meditative, velvet over gravel. Audio, the radio comes to life. A calm male voice. Welcome back to the signal. You know who you are. Or you will. Narrator. She told herself it was just coincidence. But that night, Elise Mercer dreamed of smoke, voices without mouths, and a tape recorder melting into her hands. Sound, a faint click. The static swells briefly. Then silence. Narrator. In the morning, she found blood under her fingernails. Chapter 2. A familiar frequency. Ambient, morning cityscape, subdued traffic, coffee shop murmur, light wind. The mood is quieter, but uneasy. The static hum lingers under everything. Narrator. Elise Mercer had a routine. Wake before the city. Black coffee. Scan case files. Avoid mirrors. She didn't remember falling asleep, but when she woke, her radio was on. Tuned to 108.7. Sound, a soft click. Faint static. The tail end of a sentence plays. You're starting to remember. Narrator. The words didn't register at first. They felt like leftovers from a dream, sticky, half real. She turned off the radio, poured herself coffee. Then saw her fingernails. Visual, Elise staring at her hands. Under one nail, a thin crescent of dried blood. Not hers. Elise, unsettled. I didn't go anywhere last night. I didn't. Flash cuts, images from her dream, melted tape recorder, a man's distorted face, a whisper. You're safe now. Narrator. She scrubbed her hands until the skin felt raw. Then the phone rang. Sound cell phone buzzing. A detective's voice, gruff, tired. Detective filtered. We've got another one. Same deal. Static, radio, no sign of forced entry. This one's fresh, just hours old. Narrator. She asked for the address? Wrote it down. But when she got to the scene, something chilled her more than the body. Visual, a clean suburban home. The door is unlocked. Inside, a woman dead in her armchair, a blank stare, radio playing static. Elise enters cautiously. Narrator. There was no blood this time. No struggle. Just the same frequency, the same voice whispering between layers of noise. But the real shock came when they pulled the surveillance footage. Sound, laptop booting. Police clicking through security cam footage. Freeze frame. Zoom in. Narrator. 3:12 a.m. Someone enters the house. No gloves. Calm. Alone. They move straight to the victim. No signs of coercion. The figure looks up at the hallway camera, just long enough. Visual, grainy black and white footage. The figure turns. Face partially obscured, but just enough to recognize. Narrator. It was her. Elise Mercer. Clear as day. Sound, heartbeat kicks in under narration. Elise backs away from the laptop screen. Silent. Cold. Her breath catches. Elise, Vio? No, that's not possible. I was asleep. I was home. I was. Narrator. The detective didn't notice her reaction. She asked to borrow a copy of the footage. Said she wanted to analyze gait timing. She smiled. Professional. Calm. Inside, something was screaming. Visual, Elise in her car, clutching the steering wheel, replaying the footage over and over. Her face on screen. The timestamp. 3:12 a.m. Narrator. Back home, Elise opened her laptop. She rewatched it frame by frame. Every movement, every glance. The woman in the video looked like her. Moved like her. But Elise didn't remember being there. Elise. If that's me, why don't I remember? Sound, she hits pause. Static fills the room briefly. She looks at the radio again. Slowly walks to it. Narrator. She turned the dial to 108.7. The voice returned, soft, steady, almost kind. Audio, the signal, male voice, calm, familiar. You did well last night. You're learning to trust again. Narrator. She dropped the radio. It cracked against the floor, still whispering through the broken speaker. Elise Mercer had profiled dozens of killers. But now she had to ask a question no profiler should ever have to ask. Elise, whispering. Did I do this? Chapter 3: The Blackout. Ambient night. The low hum of an empty apartment. Clock ticking. Rain taps lightly against the window. Soft static seeps in faintly, just beneath the silence. Narrator. Elise didn't sleep. Not truly. She sat in the dark, the radio in pieces on the floor, the screen frozen on her own face walking into a dead woman's home. She replayed it until the power flickered. Until the storm outside finally overpowered the lie she kept whispering to herself. Sound, thunder rumbles. A light bulb pops. Everything goes dark. Narrator. At 3:06 a.m., Elise lost consciousness. Audio, deep, soft static swells, as if it's breathing. Then nothing. Narrator. When she opened her eyes, the clock read 6:41. Her clothes were different. Her hands were wet. The door was slightly open. And her phone was missing. Visual. Elise stands frozen in her apartment doorway, looking at her wet sleeves. A smear of red near the cuff. Elise. What did I do? Narrator. She checked the bathroom mirror. Her pupils were dilated. Her heartbeat erratic. No memory. No pain. Just the smell of something burnt. Sound. She flicks on the bathroom fan. A faint static whir kicks in, like the signal lurking in everything electrical. Narrator. She found her phone in the freezer. The screen cracked. 20 missed calls from the precinct. 2 from a blocked number. 1 voicemail. Audio click. Elise listens. The voice is low, distorted. The same as the signal. The signal voice, filtered, intimate. You're making progress, Elise. The disorientation will pass. Trust the process. You're not the victim here. You're the vessel. Sound click. Silence again. Narrator. Her hands trembled. She needed answers, proof that her mind wasn't rotting from the inside. So she pulled out an old trick she hadn't used since early fieldwork. Visual. Elise arranges motion sensors in her apartment. A body cam set to record. A backup recorder hidden inside her bookshelf. Narrator. If someone was breaking in, she'd catch them. If she was leaving, she'd catch herself. Elise. I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm afraid of what happens if I ignore it. Ambient. Fade into silence. Hours pass. Night falls again. Fast forward sounds, time lapse effect. Midnight. 2 a.m. 3 a.m. Then a click. Sound, sudden glitch in the audio feed. Lights flicker. A faint tone plays, like a forgotten lullaby buried under static. Then footsteps. Narrator. The footage from that night didn't show a break-in. It didn't show a struggle. It showed Elise. Rising from bed. Eyes open. Blank. Walking to the radio, one that wasn't even plugged in. Audio. Recording picks up her voice, slow, entranced. Eloise, recorded, trance-like. I hear you. I obey. Narrator. She walked to her bookshelf. Removed a copy of an old case file. Then sat in the dark for 3 hours. Silent. Still. Listening. Visual. Elise watching the footage on her laptop the next morning. Her face is pale. Lips pressed tight. No denial left. Narrator. It wasn't just blackouts. It was command. Programming. Elise Mercer wasn't being hunted by a killer. She was being used by one. Chapter 4. Memory gaps. Ambient. Low hum of fluorescent lights. The sound of a medical waiting room, distant cough, rustling magazines, footsteps. Narrator. Elise Mercer wasn't ready to believe she was a puppet. Not yet. But she knew something had taken root in her, something invasive and very, very deliberate. If the mind could be hacked, then someone had the keys. Visual. Elise sitting in a quiet neurology clinic. Her posture is still, tense. She watches the clock tick a full minute without blinking. Narrator. She booked an emergency consult with Dr. Kaylin Voss, a neurologist she trusted, but hadn't seen in years. Back then, Elise was profiling psychopaths. Now, she was hunting something inside herself. Dr. Voss, calm, clinical. You're saying you're losing time? Hallucinations? Audio triggers? Any history of trauma, hypnotic regression? Elise, measured, lying slightly. Mild trauma. Occupational. I'm not hallucinating. Sound. Voss clicks her pen. Begins simple neurological tests, pupil tracking, hand-eye movement, reaction time. All normal. Narrator. Everything came back clean. Brain scans, reflexes, cognitive speed. No signs of injury. But Voss hesitated. Doctor. Voss. You're sharp, Elise. But I've seen this before. Not in patients, in subjects. Sleep research, behavioral studies. This looks induced. Visual. Voss pulls out a sleep cycle monitor, hands her a small wearable device. Doctor. Voss. Track your next 72 hours. Don't take anything with caffeine. Don't use stimulants. And if you hear anything strange, write it down immediately. Narrator. That night, Elise did exactly that. She turned off her phone. Covered her mirrors. Slept with the device strapped to her temple. When she woke up, the data was gone. Audio, frantic beeping. Her device is error logged. Screen reads 3.4 hours corrupted. Narrator. She checked her body for bruises. None. No new cuts. But the radio in her living room, unplugged, still shattered, was in a different place. Sound floor creaks. She slowly approaches the radio. It's playing a faint melody buried under static. The tune triggers something, a memory. Flashback audio, fragmented. Let's begin with grounding. Focus on the sound of my voice. You trust me, Elise. You trust your work. Narrator. A voice. Smooth. Calm. Male. Not quite familiar, but close. She remembered it, not from any one moment, but from dozens of them. Tiny slivers buried beneath the surface. Visual. Elise opens an old hard drive. She types keywords. Therapy recordings. Kessler. 2016. A folder appears locked. She overrides it. Narrator. Dr. Adrian Kessler. Her former therapist. The one who helped her recover from an undercover assignment years ago. He died in a fire. Or so she thought. Audio. She clicks the first recovered file. A hiss of static. Then, her voice. Elise recorded. I'm not afraid anymore. You said it'll only work if I let it in? Then, another voice, calm, direct. Kessler recorded. And you want to let it in, Elise? Elise recorded. Yes. Make me forget. And make me do what's necessary. Narrator. She froze. She hadn't remembered that session. Because she wasn't supposed to. Sound static creeps louder. Her apartment lights dim. The words from the radio whisper again, this time, in her own voice. The signal, whispering, Elise's voice. You asked for this. You asked to forget? Narrator. It wasn't just memory loss. It was programming. And the worst part? Elise couldn't be sure she hadn't agreed to all of it. Chapter 5. The Case Profile. Ambient, low, tense music. A ticking clock. Rain hammers a window as distant thunder rolls. The sound of pages flipping quickly through a thick binder. Narrator. Elise Mercer had built a career profiling killers. She could extract motives from shadows. She once caught a serial arsonist from the way he used commas in anonymous emails. But this case, this killer, it was different. Visual. Elise sits at her desk, every light off except for a reading lamp. A fresh case file lies open. Notes are pinned across the wall. Victim photos, timeline sketches, red string. But this board is different. There's only one subject in the center, her. Narrator. She started building a profile of the killer. Routine. Structured. Clinical. Except this time, she wasn't tracking a stranger. She was profiling the actions of someone who knew her, intimately. Sound, pen scribbling across paper. Occasional typing. Elise. Subject exhibits control over timing. Predictable ritual structure. High functioning. Displays comfort entering residential spaces. Likely lives alone. Deep understanding of psychological conditioning. Methodology suggests clinical detachment. Possibly a trained behavioral analyst. She stops writing. Stares at the words. Rereads the last line. Her voice tightens. Elise. Like me. Sound wind howls. The apartment creaks. Static buzzes faintly from the radio speaker she thought she unplugged again. Narrator. The parallels were too sharp. The victim selection. The lack of remorse. The signature static. Elise began to wonder, was she projecting onto the case? Or profiling herself? Visual, she flips to a timeline. 3 murders. 3 sleepwalking episodes. 3 missing time blocks. A pattern emerges. Narrator. Each death aligned with a window in which Elise reported lost time. Every crime scene showed no struggle. No forced entry. But each radio, each signal, was tuned in precisely between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. Elise. That's not a coincidence. She reaches for an old manila folder. Inside, transcripts from therapy sessions. Recovered audio. Her own words speaking back to her. She presses play. Audio, a clipped recording. Elise recorded calm. No fear. No memory. That's the trade. I trust the voice. The voice is safety. Kessler recorded. And if I need you to act? Elise recorded. Then I will act. Even if I forget. Narrator. Elise leaned back in her chair. Cold sweat behind her neck. She had always believed in free will, believed that choice made us human. But the voice on the tape wasn't a victim. It was a volunteer. Sound, her phone buzzes. A new case alert. Dispatch filtered. Homicide. 4th victim. Westlake. Same MO. Officers holding perimeter. Narrator. She drove without blinking. Rain pelting the windshield. In her mind, she repeated the same mantra. It's not me. It's not me. It's not. But she knew what she was about to find. Visual. Elise walks into the scene. Uniforms part to let her through. The victim lies on the floor. Eyes open. Mouth frozen mid-breath. No sign of violence. Just a radio by the bed. Tuned to 108.7. The detective approaches uneasy. Detective. No signs of struggle. Doors locked from the inside. Same damn frequency. That static's still playing. Elise crouches down. Something glints on the floor beside the victim, a paperclip, bent into the shape of a bird. Narrator. She froze. A red paperclip, bent into a small bird shape. Something only she ever used, her nervous habit from years ago, when she needed to focus during interviews. Only one person would know that. Herself. Visual, her face. Blank. Then dread. Then a deep, quiet knowing settles in her bones. Narrator. She was no longer chasing a killer. She was following a message. A message from herself. Chapter 6. The static deepens. Rain tapped the windows of Elise Mercer's car as she sat outside the latest crime scene. The red paperclip was still in her pocket. She hadn't said a word to anyone about it. Her eyes were locked on the radio in the passenger seat. Tuned to 108.7. The signal wasn't broadcasting now, just a soft hum, faint static like breath held too long. She didn't turn it off. Instead, she drove in silence, every corner of her mind screaming with questions. How many? How long? Why her? By the time she reached her apartment, the static was inside her head. Not loud. Just present. She needed data. Patterns. Something to ground her. She spent the next 2 hours digging through archived case files. Every victim so far had been loosely tied to a mental health program run by a now-defunct research clinic called NeuroCore. A name she recognized immediately, because it was where Kessler had worked. She opened her old personnel file from the academy. In the corner, scrawled in small print, was a referral from a Dr. Adrian Kessler. She hadn't remembered that. Elise closed her laptop. The radio in her living room, still shattered, let out a faint clicking sound. She approached it slowly. Then the static shifted. Just enough. A faint voice emerged. Not Kessler. Hers. You're getting closer. Elise staggered back. No speakers were connected. No power. Just the glass shards of an old dial catching the lamplight. The voice was hers. Calm. Measured. But not recent. She scrambled to her audio software, grabbed her external mic, and began recording. Reversing the playback. Filtering noise. Isolating frequencies. There it was. Embedded in the signal. Her own voice, layered beneath the static, repeating 3 words over and over. You agreed. You agreed. You agreed. She sat still for a long time, listening. Then she opened her bottom desk drawer, pulled out a worn notebook marked Field Notes, MK Black, and flipped to a dog-eared page. She'd written about experiments in audio-layered hypnosis, subliminal command training, control through passive repetition. And in the margin, circled in red pen, were the words, only works if the subject believes they're still in control. She looked at the bent paperclip again. Not a message from someone else. Not a clue. It was a reminder. She had left it for herself. Chapter 7, Echoes in Session. Elise Mercer sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of her apartment, her laptop glowing in the dim light. The apartment was silent, unnaturally so. Even the usual hum of the refrigerator had gone still. It felt like the world was holding its breath. She stared at the waveform on her screen. Her own voice. Repeating the same phrase. You agreed. The phrase wasn't spoken in a moment of panic. It wasn't screamed or whispered. It was delivered with perfect composure. With intent. And that terrified her. She pulled out her backup drive, an encrypted archive she hadn't touched in years. Labeled only Kessler 6/14 9/07. Inside were dozens of files, audio logs from old therapy sessions. Sessions she barely remembered giving permission to record. Maybe she hadn't. She clicked on the first. The file opened with soft static, then the smooth, baritone voice of Dr. Adrian Kessler. Let's begin. Her own voice followed, calm, casual. Same dream again. Smoke. A locked room. No doors. Kessler asked her what she felt inside the room. Her voice hesitated, then answered. Like I'm being watched. But not by someone else. It's like, it's me. Watching myself from behind my eyes. Kessler paused. You've always had a strong capacity for dissociation, Elise. That's not a weakness, it's a tool. A gateway. The session went silent for a few seconds, then changed tone. Kessler's voice deepened slightly. Let's try the auditory overlay again. Just focus on the metronome. A soft tick-tick-tick began, perfectly rhythmic, like a clock with no origin. Good. You're safe. When you hear the phrase Redbird, you'll remember this feeling, peaceful, open. Agreeable. Elise froze. That word. Redbird. It had surfaced before. During a blackout. A fragment. And now it was here, spoken during therapy like a casual trigger. She scrubbed through more files. Different sessions. Different moods. Always the same voice. The same method. Another file opened mid-sentence. You'll feel drawn to static. That will help ground you in the role. You won't question it. You'll feel safe around it. Safe and obedient. Elise stood up abruptly, heart pounding. How many of these sessions had she undergone? How much of her behavior in the past year, the past week, had been hers? She tried to focus. On something real. On something uninfected. She opened her physical case file, the one for the current murders. She flipped through the photos again. Same expression on every face. Same emptiness in their eyes. But one image stopped her cold. It was a crime scene photo of the second victim, the woman in the armchair. On the coffee table, just out of frame in the footage, was a small object. A tape recorder. She hadn't noticed it before. She zoomed in. The model was ancient. One that Elise used to use years ago during interviews. Kessler had given it to her. She remembered now. The model number engraved at the bottom, RK79B. And just beneath the recorder, partly covered by a coaster, was something else. A photograph. A photograph of Elise. Not recent. Not professional. Just a candid shot, her sitting in a cafe, years ago. Smiling at someone across from her. Someone who wasn't in the frame. Elise shut the file. Her hands shook. Whoever had left that photo wanted her to find it. Wanted her to remember. Or worse, wanted her to realize she'd already been there. That night, Elise didn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, headphones on, listening to every recovered session. Some were mundane. Others surreal. In one, Kessler asked her if she would protect his work. She answered yes. In another, he asked if she trusted him more than herself. She said yes again. But the most disturbing was the final entry on the drive. Last phase begins tonight, Kessler said. Elise, when you hear the phrase open the channel, you will become receptive. Not suggestible, receptive. There's a difference. Suggestion implies resistance. You won't resist. You'll become the signal. Her voice serene. I understand. Then static. Then silence. She closed the laptop. The floor felt like it was tilting beneath her. Her heart beat too fast. Her thoughts swirled with doubt, with rage, with recognition. She wasn't being conditioned anymore. She already had been. And somewhere, behind all of this, Adrian Kessler was still pulling strings. Or he was just finishing what she'd agreed to start. Chapter 8 erased. Elise Mercer stared at the blank wall across from her desk. Not metaphorically blank. Literally. She had once pinned case notes, suspect profiles, crime scene diagrams across it, a private timeline of the ongoing murders. Now it was bare. Clean. The pins were still there, but the paper was gone. She didn't remember taking it down. She checked the trash. Empty. She checked her phone camera, where she always documented evidence boards. Nothing. Not even cached thumbnails. Like it had never existed. Her pulse climbed. She opened her computer. The case folder titled 108.7 was still there, but when she clicked, it returned a single error. Directory not found. She tried a recovery tool. It stalled. Then crashed. She tried again using a terminal. The command line returned something she hadn't expected. Access denied, administrative lockout, Kessler protocol.v2. Her breath caught in her throat. Kessler Protocol. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a buried system, one she clearly had known about, but had since forgotten. Had she encrypted her own files and then forgotten the key? She opened her old notebooks, page after page of scrawl. Half of it seemed like notes from sessions with victims. The other half, technical blueprints. Subliminal command loops, waveform layering, psychological stress triggers. Then she found something stranger. A note to herself. Scrawled in thick, red ink. If you're reading this, it's too late to undo it. But you can still end it. Don't trust any version of you that calms you. Her mouth went dry. She read it 3 more times. That line, "Don't trust any version of you that calms you," felt like a fracture. Like something had already split inside her, and one version of Elise was now trying to warn the other. She leaned back, staring up at the ceiling. How far back did this go? She remembered her first meeting with Kessler, or at least, she thought she did. She remembered walking into his office, feeling unwell, needing help after a traumatic undercover assignment. But now that memory felt fuzzy, as if viewed from underwater. She opened her phone again. Scrolled through old recordings. Looked for voicemails from unknown numbers. Only one remained. Dated 7 months ago. She pressed play. Kessler's voice filled the room. Calm. Certain. You're not listening to this by accident. If you're hearing me, it means you've started to wake up again. That's okay. You were always meant to forget. That was the deal. But I knew curiosity might override the protocol eventually. She froze. He continued. There is no going back to who you were. Because you're not one person. There's the investigator. The subject. The carrier. The cleaner. Right now, you're the investigator. If you dig too deep, you'll trigger the switch. And we'll be back at square one. A pause. Then a softer tone. Elise, this isn't punishment. This is the design. You asked me to build it this way. The voicemail ended with a burst of static. Her hand dropped the phone. It slid off the desk and thudded to the floor. She was shaking. She wasn't just losing memories. They were being systematically erased. By code, by suggestion, maybe by her own instructions. She dug back into her drive. Accessed the deepest folder she could unlock. Inside, she found only one file. A corrupted audio log. Title: Project DAD Phase 1. She ran the file through noise reduction. The voice was warped, but still hers. Day 1. Initiating Deep Embed Protocol. Subject is compliant. Subject is me. Timeline unclear. Redundancy built in. Kessler is the access key. I am the carrier. Then another voice. Kessler. You understand what this means? She answered. Yes. If I ever try to stop myself, I won't let me. The file ended in static. Elise sat in the dark, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen. Her life, the investigation, her identity, even her thoughts, had been overwritten, stitched together with gaps, false memories, and compliance protocols. She was chasing a killer that might not even exist. She might be the killer. Or worse, she might be the architect of all of it. Chapter 9 Voiceprint. Elise sat at the edge of her bed, the cold blue light from her laptop reflecting off the walls. The audio file still blinked on screen. The phrase echoed in her head like a curse. I am the carrier. That sentence alone had enough weight to break her. But she didn't break. She did what she always did. She investigated. For the last 2 hours, she had been running advanced voiceprint analysis on every recovered audio file. Her own voice was easy to isolate. It was in dozens of sessions, field notes, and messages she didn't remember recording. But the other voice, the one on the signal, was elusive. Always filtered, degraded, buried beneath static and atmospheric noise. Until now. She leaned in as the software beeped. Match found. 94% voice print alignment. Dr. Adrian Kessler. She felt her stomach twist. Kessler was alive. The fire that supposedly killed him 6 years ago now looked more like a ghost story than a tragedy. His obituary had been sparse. No body was recovered. A vague write-up about a lab accident. No public funeral. No photos. Just gone. But now his voice was being broadcast from somewhere, masked by interference, reaching her through 108.7 FM. Carefully. Precisely. She opened a new case file, this time on Kessler. Built his profile from scratch. Highly intelligent. Charismatic. Background in clinical hypnosis, cognitive conditioning, and psycholinguistics. Worked in behavioral therapy for law enforcement personnel. Known for unconventional methods. And then she saw it. A redacted line in an old report. Faint enough to miss. She enhanced the text. Patient EM approved for Phase 1 immersion protocol. Initiated by Dr. A.K. EM. Elise Mercer. She clenched her fists, eyes burning. Her entire relationship with Kessler had been staged. She wasn't just his patient. She was his subject. A test bed for something larger. Something broadcast. She switched windows and pulled up her latest radio signal capture, a 2-minute excerpt from the last night's signal broadcast. It began with static. Then music. Then a familiar voice, soothing as ever. You're safe here, Elise. There's no judgment in clarity. Only truth. She ran the voice through 3 levels of deconstruction. Then overlaid it with Kessler's archived seminar recordings. His university lectures. His old podcast. They matched. Same cadence. Same vocal tics. Same breath patterns between words. The man speaking over 108.7 wasn't a copycat. Wasn't a simulation. It was him. Adrian Kessler was speaking directly to her. Still active. Still pulling strings. And now, more than ever, he wanted her to hear him. She played it again. You're safe here, Elise. But this time, she heard something beneath it. Faint. Layered. Almost imperceptible. She filtered again, boosting the low-frequency signal buried beneath his voice. Then it became clear. Her own voice, whispering a response. I hear you. Not live. Not present. A recording, embedded in the frequency. Like a call and response loop built right into the audio. She froze. This wasn't a message for the public. It was a private channel. A closed loop. Kessler wasn't just speaking to her. He was speaking with her. And somehow, she'd been replying. She clicked through old radio captures, isolating frequency threads. The pattern repeated, his voice, her voice, nested responses. Some were basic. Kessler. You trust me. Elise. Yes. Others were more disturbing. Kessler. Will you correct the anomaly? Elise. If necessary. Then one, barely audible under static. Kessler. What are you now? Elise. The switch. Her hands trembled. She tried to process it, tried to convince herself this was some complex looped audio trick. A form of playback manipulation. But deep down she knew. These weren't pre-recorded affirmations. These were real responses. Hers. Spoken unconsciously. Buried by programming. She had been communicating with him. Maybe for weeks. Maybe longer. Her body moved to his frequency. Her voice answered in trance. Her mind, a conduit for something she no longer fully controlled. Suddenly, her screen flickered. The audio software crashed. Then came a new sound, soft and insistent. From her old desk radio, broken and unplugged. It clicked on. And he spoke. Live. You found me. Good. That means the others will follow. She stepped back slowly, eyes wide, breath caught. Don't panic, he said. You're not being hunted. You're being retrieved. You were never supposed to get this far alone. Then silence. The radio shut itself off. Elise stared at it, heart pounding in her ears. She wasn't just the subject of an experiment anymore. She was the bait for something bigger. And whatever it was coming back online.
The case may be closed for now, but mysteries always leave behind new questions. If you enjoyed this investigation, leave a like. Every clue you find keeps the trail alive. Share your theories in the comments. Your mind might be sharper than you think. And subscribe to our channel Detective Mystery Stories, where every case hides a deeper secret, and every secret deserves to be uncovered. The next mystery is already waiting for you.